Hello and welcome back to Reality Remake. If you're a fan of shooters or shooting games and have an Oculus Quest, you're probably thinking that shooting games would be pretty awesome in virtual reality. Well, they are. Shooters are one of the most consistently fun genres that takes full advantage of what VR has to offer. Actually handling a gun and its parts directly to reload and aim makes VR shooting games instantly more tactile and immersive. Many of the varieties of shooters which can be found in flat-screen games are making their way over to VR, and this list includes many different genres of shooting games. There's multiplayer as well as single-player shooting games for the Quest in here. These are the best shooting games on the Oculus Quest 2. Chances are you've probably heard about Onward. It's a well-known shooter because it has been around for a very long time and was originally released for PCVR many years ago. Since then, it has seen many improvements and additions while also being ported to the Quest 2. In case you aren't familiar, Onward is a multiplayer-focused shooter, though it does have some single-player features, that takes place during a fictional worldwide conflict in the modern day. Whichever team you are on determines what weapons you can choose for your loadouts, and teams are limited to 5 players each, similar to the Counter-Strike franchise. Movement speeds are low, and so is the time to kill. 1 or 2 shots can easily down a player. Even being wounded means you need to use a medical syringe on yourself or you collapse. If you want a slow and tactical multiplayer shooter experience, then Onward is a game you should definitely try. For more about Onward, check out our video comparing it to Contractors. Now for a game you probably haven't heard about. Lies Beneath is not a multiplayer game. Instead, it's a linear story-based horror shooter. You are one woman with nothing but a magical lighter and a few old guns and blades against hordes of terrifying, otherworldly monsters. Lies Beneath has a story that is genuinely thrilling and a number of disquieting and beautiful settings to match it. It remains consistently creepy where it isn't outright scary, and varies the gameplay constantly so that you never know what you'll find or shoot at next. Whether you're defending a cabin against a horde of zombies with a shotgun, or blasting your way through a village of possessed fishermen with a revolver, Lies Beneath never gets dull. Are you an Overwatch fan? Maybe a Valorant fan? Well, if you want a similar experience in virtual reality on the Quest 2, there is no game that embraces the hero shooter genre like Larcenauts. Set in a sci-fi future, this multiplayer shooter has a variety of characters to choose from. Each character has unique weapons and abilities that allow them to affect the battlefield and help their team in various ways. Larcenauts is generally fast-paced and has a high time to kill, giving you ample time to utilize abilities or reposition in a fight, making it a strategic shooter experience similar to Overwatch. Aiming your virtual weapons is still fun when they're weird, futuristic shapes, and there is a ton of variety to be had in the classes. No doubt there's something to fit your playstyle if you like more arcadey and movement-focused shooters. Into the Radius is hands down the best survival shooter available on any platform, not just the Quest 2. It's often compared to the Stalker series of games, but takes much more inspiration from the book that inspired Stalker, Roadside Picnic. In Into the Radius, you explore the Prachorsk Radius, fighting strange creatures made of dark matter and avoiding deadly anomalies while completing missions and gathering artifacts to sell. There are a huge number of weapons and pieces of equipment to buy to keep you alive in the zone, which has dangers that only become greater the further in you go. Though the further in you go, the closer you get to revealing the mysteries of what exactly happened to Prachorsk. If you want a tense single-player survival shooter, then Into the Radius is a must-play. As far as virtual reality shooting games in general, it's one of the best out there, and should be at the top of your list if you want a great single-player shooter on the Quest 2. Finally, a Warhammer 40k game in virtual reality. If you don't know what Warhammer 40k is, it's basically a far future galaxy in which the Imperium, which has incorporated most of humanity, is fighting basically everyone who isn't them. In Warhammer 40,000 Battle Sister, you are a Sister of Battle, an elite woman super soldier armed and armored to the teeth. You fight mostly the forces of chaos, who represent the entropic forces of the galaxy that want to destroy the Imperium. From cultists to huge chaos space marines to demons of several kinds, there is great enemy variety in Warhammer 40k Battle Sister, as well as weapon variety. Though the combat can start to feel a little repetitive after a while, many encounters tend to play out in a similar fashion. Warhammer 40k Battle Sister is mostly a linear single-player experience, though there is some multiplayer available in its endless horde survival mode. The one downside is that sometimes the game forces you into long and boring talking sequences that you can't skip, and the dialogue isn't the most well written. Occasionally it is somewhat cringy, with a little overcommitment to character. If you want to have some gun battles with large industrial weapons in an interesting grimdark sci-fi setting, or are already a Warhammer 40k fan, give Battle Sister a look. Contractors is another multiplayer online shooter for the Quest 2 that is often called the Call of Duty of VR. This is because the gameplay of Contractors, despite being in VR, shares many similarities with the Call of Duty franchise. Movement is fast, and so is the gunplay. If you want fast-paced action, then Contractors is probably going to be your go-to game. While there are a variety of game modes, most of them play out pretty similarly. Spawn, run for a few seconds, see an enemy, fight, see another enemy, fight, die, rinse, repeat. There is constant action and very little waiting. You will die and be in another gunfight in less than 30 seconds. The action never stops. As for the gunplay, it plays out quickly, but gives you a chance to react. Jumping while shooting and sliding towards your enemy while shooting are totally viable tactics here, though the pace of gameplay can vary when playing any of Contractor's many mods. That is the greatest strength of this game, how moddable it is. As far as multiplayer shooters on the Quest 2, there are none with anywhere near the amount of modability and available mods as Contractors. There's a Halo mod, a great Star Wars Battlefront mod, and even some attempts at creating Call of Duty Zombies mode, and DayZ. Check out our video comparing it to Onward. Sniper Elite VR is currently the best World War II shooter available on the Quest 2. You might think that Medal of Honor Above and Beyond would hold that title, but a badly paced single-player campaign combined with poorly thought-out multiplayer means that Sniper Elite gets the honor. Sniper Elite VR takes place in Italy during World War II. You are a partisan fighting the Nazi occupiers, and Nazi shooting never gets old, especially in this game. There are many different and varied combat encounters to fight through, though as the name implies, sniping is the core focus of the game. The shooting is very fun, and all weapons have impressive kickback, with slow motion X-ray vision sometimes turning on and showing you just how devastating your bullet is as it goes through an enemy soldier's body. If you want the World War II shooter experience in VR, then Sniper Elite VR is the place to look. There are a ton of weapons and missions to enjoy. The downside is that Sniper Elite VR is an entirely single-player experience. For more on Sniper Elite VR, check out our review, link in the description. Here's another purely single-player game, but it is a legendary one. The original Resident Evil 4 was a huge hit that created a whole new genre of shooters. Resident Evil 4 VR is a very faithful and very well-made adaptation of the original to the VR format, and it is just as much of a hit. Fill the shoes of Leon Kennedy as you fight through the Ganados cult in rural Spain to save the president's daughter. There will be plenty of homicidal villagers and mutants on the way, as Resident Evil 4 VR brings the immersive manual reloading and aiming that can only be done in virtual reality to the story and gameplay of Resident Evil 4. This is a phenomenal combination that will leave you starved for more and happy to strap on your headset another time. If you have ever played and enjoyed a Resident Evil game, or games from similar franchises like Uncharted or the newer Tomb Raider games, then get Resident Evil 4 VR. Oh, and if you ever get stuck, then check out our video with tips and tricks. If you love Star Wars, especially the newer movies, then Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge is a must-play in virtual reality. Most of the gameplay is shooting with a variety of Star Wars weapons, while still keeping the whimsical comedy and tone of the newer entries in the franchise. You even get to meet some of your favorite Star Wars characters, and even meet a few new and memorable ones. Though actual interactions are limited, they mostly just talk at you. In Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, you are a lowly laborer who is thrust into a confrontation with a ruthless gang when your ship is attacked above a far-flung planet. Then you explore one of the galaxy's furthest flung worlds while blasting your way through a variety of creative Star Wars enemies. There's some collectibles to find that encourage exploration, and a lot of varied combat that you can play slowly hiding behind cover, or quickly rushing in and blasting as fast as possible. If you want some whimsy in your shooter and like Star Wars, then you won't be disappointed by Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. Oh, and there's also a DLC where you get to be a Jedi, and who doesn't want to be a Jedi? Do you like battle royales? Well, then you'll like Population 1, as it's the only battle royale available on the Quest 2. It's a pretty great one though, and while each match doesn't support as many people as a flat-screen battle royale, there are a lot of players for a VR game, more than enough to make the game tense, and Population 1 keeps the repositioning and equipment gathering between firefights fast-paced. Movement is quick and fun, with the ability to glide by stretching your arms out, or to climb up buildings with your bare hands. You have health as well as shields, meaning combat can be a protracted and very fun affair. There's also building, but it's not as widespread or as quick to do as in other games like Fortnite. Population 1 does have a bot mode for single player, but the heart of the game is playing with a squad of other people and trying to be the last ones to survive. If you love battle royales and want to see what one would be like in virtual reality, then get your hands on Population 1. BONELAB is another VR shooter you've probably heard about, and for very good reason. Where Contractors is the king of multiplayer modding in virtual reality, BONELAB is the king of single-player modding in virtual reality. Except maybe for Blade and Sorcery, but we're talking about shooters here. BONELAB is a single-player only game that has a satisfyingly long campaign that lets you fight all sorts of strange enemies with a multitude of guns and melee weapons, though the guns are clearly the best part. If you like puzzles, then BONELAB offers just about as many physics puzzles as it does shooting. The real gem of BONELAB is what is outside of the campaign, and that is the multitude of mods for weapons, enemies, maps, and so much more. BONELAB also has a unique feature that now allows you to download different skins for your character and switch between them, and each skin has a variety of stats, so you can be a strong and slow guy, or a tiny gremlin that can fit into tight spaces, or anything in between. There's modded skins for popular characters like Batman, Deadpool, and so much more. If you want a more sandbox-like experience, or want to get into making your own mods for a shooter, then BONELAB is a great game to play. If you're also wondering how you're going to download these mods on your Quest 2 with no PC, then check out our article, link again in the description. Feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. This has been Reality Remake, and as always, have fun shooting in VR.